He was born in the shadow of war, imprisoned by the Tsar, and sentenced to death, only to become one of the greatest novelists the world has ever known. This is the extraordinary story of Fyodor Dostoevsky, the man who saw into the darkest corners of the human soul and wrote with a fire forged in suffering. Fyodor Dostoevsky was born on November 11, 1821, in Moscow, the second son of a doctor working at a hospital for the poor. From the very beginning, life surrounded him with contrasts: extreme wealth and deep poverty, harsh discipline and intense spirituality. These contradictions would later echo through all his writing. His mother died when he was just 15. His father? Murdered, possibly by his own serfs. Whether that's fact or myth hardly matters. What is true is that young Fyodor was suddenly alone in a brutal, unforgiving world. He escaped into books. Balzac, Schiller, Shakespeare. He devoured stories like a man starving for meaning. But Russia had plans for him, not as a writer, but as a military engineer. He hated it. In 1846, Dostoevsky exploded onto the literary scene with Poor Folk, a tender, tragic story of love and desperation. The critics were impressed. It looked like a star was born. But then, disaster. Fyodor got swept up in the Petrushevsky Circle, a group of intellectuals and socialists discussing banned books and radical ideas. In Tsarist Russia, that was treason. In 1849, he was arrested, thrown in a freezing cell, and sentenced to death. They lined him up before a firing squad. Guns were raised. Orders shouted. And then, a last-minute pardon from the Tsar. The whole thing had been a psychological torture. Dostoevsky would never be the same. His sentence was commuted to 4 years in a Siberian labor camp, followed by forced military service. There, among murderers and thieves, Dostoevsky found the soul of Russia. He found suffering. He found faith. And he began to believe, not in revolution, but in redemption. In the camp, he was denied writing materials, but he memorized characters, stories, voices. When he finally returned to society, he poured it all onto the page. He came back to St. Petersburg older, broken, and wiser. Over the next 2 decades, he would write some of the most powerful novels in all of literature. Open Book Notes from Underground, the first modern existential novel. Open Book Crime and Punishment, a philosophical thriller about guilt and punishment. Open Book The Idiot, the tragedy of a good man in a corrupt world. Open Book Demons, a terrifying prophecy of political nihilism. Open Book The Brothers Karamazov, his masterpiece, where theology, philosophy, murder, and love all collide. But while his mind soared, his life was chaos. He was crippled by epileptic seizures, haunted by gambling addiction, and buried in debt. He lost children. He nearly lost everything, again and again. Only through the support of his second wife, Anna Grigorievna, did he find some stability. She managed his finances, typed his manuscripts, and stood by him when the world seemed to fall apart. Dostoevsky died on February 9, 1881, at the age of 59. His funeral drew tens of thousands. Russia mourned, not just a writer, but a prophet. His works had revealed something raw and real, the moral battleground within every human being. And today, more than a century later, his words still cut deep. Studio microphone, to live without hope is to cease to live. Studio microphone, man is a mystery. It needs to be unraveled, and if you spend your whole life unraveling it, don't say that you've wasted your time. Fyodor Dostoevsky saw humanity at its worst, and loved it anyway. If you've ever wrestled with guilt, with faith, with madness, with meaning, then you've already met Dostoevsky. His stories aren't just stories. They're mirrors. They show us who we are, and what we might become. This has been Backpage. If you enjoyed this story, subscribe for more lives that changed the world, one page at a time.